So before we go into that question, maybe I'll take the liberty of saying how wonderful it is to be in Calcutta. It's really, every time I come, I've been coming here quite often. It's really to engage the community here. I'm so glad Asia Society is here, trying to get active in Kolkata. In many ways, the idea of Asia is very deeply linked to Calcutta. In fact, there was China, there was Nippon, there was Cathay, there was East Indies, there was India. The idea of Asia in a modern, contemporary sense owes a lot to what happened in Calcutta. The Asiatic Society, William Jones set it up here, 1784. Then you have the expansion of the British Raj from here into surrounding regions of Asia. Much of it was done from here. Then the idea of a political Asia, you have actually 1902, the Japanese cultural historian Okakura Tenshin came here to meet Tagore. So it was two of them who really proclaimed the idea of Asia, how much there was, because each of us had different colonial rulers, the discovery of each other in a way, different parts of Asia. And then Tagore's travels through China to Japan to different parts of the world. There again, you have this the fantastic encounter, from which comes Kalidas now and the setting up of the Greater India Society, again that was in Calcutta, which actually began the engagement with Asia in a deeper way. In between, there were another Bengali, you must mention M.N. Roy. He and Lenin, were the principal organizers of a conference in Baku, Azerbaijan. It was called the Congress of the Peoples of the East. The whole idea was how do you set the East ablaze with revolutions. So Manorendranath Roy was in the international Comintern, he was a key actor. And then you have the final idea of political Asia when Jawaharlal Nehru goes to Brussels to attend the Anti-Imperialist Congress, where he meets the Chinese delegation and unveils a sense of how India and China are going to work together in the post-colonial Asia. So in some ways, a lot is linked to this city. So I'm so glad Inakshi you brought Asia Society here, and I hope there's a beginning of a beautiful relationship. I think you build it up. So coming to your specific question, on the question of Iran and why Israel and US have this thing, here again, one of the Governor Generals of India, Lord Curzon, before coming to India, he wrote this long travels on horseback through Iran. So he had this great book called Persia and the Persian Question, which he published before coming here. So the connection was a deep one. My sense of looking at, I think it's easy to think of the conflict today between US and Israel and Iran as something that started last year with the bombing on the nuclear issue, and then the renewal of the fighting this year. But I think the story goes back a little deeper. In fact, the very foundation of the Islamic Republic of Iran. If you say there are two slogans when they were formed, death to America, death to Israel. Now, you can go into the reason why they had the slogans. Because the fight for democracy in Iran against the Shah of Iran was seen as also as a fight against the Americans because the Shah was so closely tied to the US. And then Shah of Iran was among the two Muslim countries that actually had reasonable relationship with Israel. Actually, Turkey and Iran they had recognized diplomatic relationship with Iran. But the revolutionary Iran framed the relationship with Israel and with the US in fundamentally adversarial terms. Now, what happens revolutionary states are sitting in Bengal? The communists in China, the communists in Russia, come with these great universalist slogans, but end up being normalized over a period of time when reality starts hitting you. You get to be more pragmatic. But in the case of Iran, that pragmatism has just not happened in a way. It remains a revolutionary state. Since we don't face the heat of the Iranian revolution, we don't see that threat as much here. But if you're living in the Middle East, Iran is not just saying we're an Islamic republic. They're saying we want to export the idea of the Iranian revolution to the rest of the Middle East. In opposition to the Gulf Arab states, in opposition to the secular Arab states, in opposition to the conservative Arab states. So therefore they claim that they would transform the Middle East. They were more pro-Palestine than the Arabs themselves. They were more radical than the Arabs themselves. They were more Islamic than the Arabs themselves. Once you framed it in these terms, the tension between Iran and the Arab neighbors was a fundamental one, and the West was clearly on the side of the Arabs. So you had at least the war of Iran-Iraq war. The Gulf Arabs turned to Iraq to secure themselves against the Islamic revolution. Then you had the whole range of continuous wars that have been fought in the region.